first item on the agenda, we have voted on CNAB 1.0.1. Just as a reminder, when we vote on patch release numbers like that for a spec, what we mean is we have only fixed errata and things in the specification that were unclear, and we just added clarifying text. We didn't make any changes, didn't add any new features, nothing like that. There's a 1.1 milestone that is open that would add new features, and we won't make any breaking changes without remarking the major version. So we follow basically SEMVer, but for specifications. So the 1.01 version of the spec has a number of small changes, couple clarifications, some typo fixes. The core maintainers voted on it this week, and it has now passed unanimously. The current protocol is that the directors of the foundation also have to vote on the spec. However, both of us also voted in the issue queue. So I suppose at this point, we've cleared all the hurdles. Absent any objections today, I'll take the task of merging that in as a branch off of the main repository and updating all the links and everything like that. So I suppose this is the speak now or forever hold your peace kind of moment, where you can speak or say something in the channel. But the issue is voted on and pretty much done. Okay, by silence, it appears that it passes. So I'll take the task of merging that into the main tree as its own branch sometime this week. And I have an outstanding PR that has a couple of links in it. I'll just go ahead and update that particular PR and add this one. Okay, next item on the agenda. There were 3 issues that have been marked for some review. The first one is issue 339. Radu, you are on top of things. Radu just dropped a link in there in the Slack. The claims specification is one of the ones we are very actively working on right now. We're trying to get it kind of settled in because all the tools want to be able to collaborate with a particular claims format so that runtimes can pick up the work done by other runtimes and continue going with it. So earlier this week, after some discussions, some misunderstandings, several of us thinking about the problem differently, we kind of started actually getting stuff articulated really well in the issue queue. It's very, very great. I went from being frustrated and grouchy to being really happy that we had finally started to all realize what we were each kind of individually assuming. So Carolyn has opened up 339, which is a pull request that splits claims into 2 pieces. Do you want to go ahead and kick off a discussion of this, Carolyn, and explain thinking and where we are on it?
Yeah. Oh shoot. Wait. 339. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Radu dropped a link in the Slack.
Yeah.
This is the claims.
So Jacob and I were working on how to make claims work a little bit better because outputs can get really big. For example, imagine an output that's doing a database dump, so like PG dump or something like that, can get very large, and always having to like push that around on the network just to be able to see a list of your installations is expensive, and we don't really need to be incurring that expense all the time. So what we'd like to be able to do is a couple different things, but the gist of it is that the top level document for claim should just be all the inputs that went into kicking off the claim. So the action itself, which is currently inside of result, moves up to the top level document. And various things like that just kind of shuffle around. And then inside of the result itself, which is embedded inside of the claim at the moment, instead of having the entire output like byte dump, which could be huge, it just shows the names of the outputs. And then it's up to the tool itself to decide, using whatever information it has, to decide should I request that from the runtime before I'm finished with the bundle's execution or not. And so it can request the outputs and persist them or not. It may actually have not, for example, wanted that output, like say the database dump or something like that. And then it can save them and make it available to the user at the end. So maybe like one of the things Porter does is you can say, show me the output 5 days later after I ran this bundle. So that was something like Porter would always request, but maybe another tool doesn't always want to be able to query that and keep it around. And what this will do is drastically reduce the size of our claims, which will be really good. So it's just kind of like a big shuffle there. We're still discussing if we want to take the core of result and split it out of claim or not. And I think at the end, we've kind of decided maybe we could merge this as is and make that a separate discussion. And I was kind of bringing it up here to see if we are okay with that or if we want to make that decision in this PR. But yeah, so I was just hoping people could take a look at that and see what they think and let us know, because it would be a breaking change for people consuming the spec and CNAB-GO.
Well, since this is in a separate section that's not marked as stable, I think that's okay. I'd almost be okay with just merging it so it gets more visibility and then asking people to improve it.
Okay. And then the second one is mine too. It's 340. Hopefully this one's a little clearer. So we have status for a claim, and some of the statuses were really easy for tools to understand on when they should be applied. Failed, successful. Okay, we knew when to use those. But for the most part, tools had no idea when to use some of the other ones. Pending, we didn't know when to use it. So we want to redefine when to use pending and introduce a new state as well. So pending is a temporary state that should still be resolved. We shouldn't just leave it in pending forever. But the idea is that pending is this transient state that means that we haven't begun executing it. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about a tool like Duffel all by itself, or even Porter all by itself. But if you've seen like Butcher's CNAB operator, where it may have gotten 100 requests all at once to start executing a whole bunch of bundles, it may actually want to indicate that by making, say, like 100 claims and marking them as pending, so you can tell that these are going to be kicked off, and give visibility into the system and just go, we're going to be doing an upgrade on the MySQL bundle, for example, and bring it from 5.7.1 to 5.7.13 or something. I made up those numbers, those aren't real. But that's the idea behind the pending state, to just clarify it a little bit more. So when you could use it, when you'd want to use it, because some of the wording behind it was a little scary because we said to avoid using it entirely, but we had it in there. And then we introduced another state called running that we could use. Tools could choose to use it or not. That would just indicate that we're actually running this bundle. Some bundles take quite a long time to run, like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You know, people put a lot of stuff in their bundles. And in some cases, especially like imagine like we need a patch scenario and you don't always know like who's doing what, it can help to know that an upgrade is actually being run and I don't need to run it. I can see that it's already happening right now. It's already been claimed, essentially. When you're only working with a tool in a local file system, it's not immediately obvious that this is a necessary state. But when you start thinking about when the tools move claims into shared locations, and you could have users all pointing their CLIs like Duffel or Porter or something like that at a common pool of claims, it'd be really helpful to be able to go, when I list all my installations, I can tell that somebody's already in the middle of a 30-minute upgrade on MySQL, and I shouldn't actually try to kick off another operation on it. So again, it's optional, but that's kind of what it's supposed to be able to indicate. So that's that one.
So before going on to the next one, do people have comments on 339 or 340? 339 being the splitting of the spec into a claim and an outputs thing, and 340 being the one we just discussed about adding a running label and clarifying the pending language.
It all sounds reasonable to me. I haven't looked at them in detail yet, though, so I need to make some time to do that.
Yeah, I wanted to leave them open for a while so that people could really look at them and comment. We didn't just get two and send them through. And then I have one more that this is kind of like a.
Jacob was about to say something, so.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say I added one quick comment. I think we might also want a cancellation status or a canceled status, and would make my brain happier if they were all consistently adjectives or nouns.
So instead of
failed instead of failure.
Yeah, the original intent had not been to capture the in-process states at all with claims. They were originally intended to record what had already happened, but usage of that has really kind of changed. So I think it would make sense to either pick, are we saying this is the current state of it, or this was the result? It was originally intended to be the result of the last operation. And it kind of gradually has crept toward the current state of the release. And if we were going to do that, we should probably just do one nice before we standardize this thing and everybody for all eternity says, why is this one, success and this one? So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
No, that's a good one. I like canceled too.
And I think that one has two core maintainers already LGTM that one, so we can move 340 along at a quicker pace, though I'm enthusiastic about the ideas presented here. So.
And it's the same story as with the previous PR, in which it's not marked as stable, and we should probably, I would personally prefer if we had something merged that people can comment on rather than waiting to have something perfect and then merging.
So you're suggesting merge as is now, do a follow-up PR to change the, okay. Yeah,
I don't like the model of having tons of PRs because it makes it really unreadable. If we have as few as possible PRs and then just say, point people to places in the spec that they can read to make changes, I think that's better.
All right, so I don't have merge rights. So if someone wants to merge or feels it's ready, feel free. And then the next one is on the community repository. We talked last time about adding common documents because we have kind of documents that we copy and paste across all the repos. And so this is just my follow-up to that. It seemed like two documents were consistent across the repositories, a contributing guide and a governance document. So I took them basically as is. I just removed things that were specific, like I mentioned, the repository, and I brought them in. And then in a separate PR, I'll talk about how to fix them a little bit because they don't actually match what we do. Like, for example, the government doc, there's been drift between what we do and what we say. But I want to at least keep exactly what we do so that I don't sneak any changes in. So I just hope people could look at that. And the idea being is instead of copying and pasting, we'd link to these. For example, in like CNAB to OCI, stuff like that, CNAB-GO.
This would probably also require. Oh, sorry.
Who has to approve stuff on community? Do we know?
Okay, so that was the other one I opened. There's no CODEOWNERS file on that repo. I've been merging stuff for like meeting notes, but otherwise I don't touch that repo, and I don't really know who's supposed to be doing stuff on that repo. So I added that to the agenda, but we can talk about that now. I don't know.
Okay,
we should probably have a CODEOWNERS and be more explicit about who should be able to change things. Because like obviously the top level governance is just you and Chris, but otherwise it's a little unclear.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to jump the gun on that agenda item.
That's okay.
What were you going to say, Chris?
I was going to say probably the changes for the if we want people to add a governance or contributing guides to source code projects that are contributed, we should also update the doc that I put in about how to donate a piece of code to the project. In terms of governance of this repo, I think we can discuss that quickly now. I think whoever would like to do it should be involved. I think it is a community repo. I mean, there will be some things that will be sensitive, things like how the governance of the whole CNAB project is done. But for the large part, I think most of the stuff will be informative just for people joining the project. So I don't know, maybe there's some things that will be only able to be edited by certain people, but for the most part, it'll be, anybody who was willing to contribute should be able to.
So is there anything other than governance that should be approved by you and Matt? I'm thinking there could be a CODEOWNERS file where you and Matt are listed as owners for governance MD, and then the rest of us, we can choose based on whoever wants to contribute to that repo.
Yeah, probably anything that has legal ramifications that we have to run through JDF would be good to.
Yeah, I was thinking the governance and the license and everything else is fine.
There's a contributing ladder, but I'm not sure we actually hold people to that. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think to start, it's probably just the governance and license.
Okay, I can open up a PR and suggest it, and then Chris and Butcher, if you'd be the ones who would approve it, that'd be great.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, so 24, yeah, looking that's looking great. I think that's will be an easy one to get merged in. Okay, so Chris has an update on the beginnings of the working document about the CNAB registry specs. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
It is hard to take notes and speak at the same time. Right, so okay, right. So I kicked off a doc. I haven't looked at it since. I haven't been able to make any time. I'm now going to start allocating time like Matt does on certain days to make sure that my agenda doesn't get hijacked by higher ups. I think we're off to a reasonable start. We've already got a structure in place. It's really just about detailing what the code looks like. I know that Radu and Siva are probably the most able to do that because they have the most up-to-date understanding of how it all works. I read the docs and things way back and played with it a bit, but I haven't dove into the code in a while. But anybody else who'd like to contribute should reach out and join the meetings we have on the off week. We'll use those with the security meeting to discuss that. So I'll try to make it advance slowly but surely, but I'd also, anybody who'd like to contribute would be great. There's a HackMD link in the agenda as well. So that's it. So no real update. Just it started, but it needs help. It needs love.
And again, kind of our rough time frame for getting rough prioritization is to continue pushing the claims through because we thought that was going to be the easy one, and then get to what we learned when applying our tools, and then the security spec is getting pretty close to draft complete on that one. I think 304 is still outstanding, right? Or did that get merged?
Yeah, 304 is still outstanding.
Do we have a process for voting in these portions of the spec or something? Like ratifying them?
Voting will go the same as with the core spec. Anybody who's listed as a core maintainer will be asked to vote. Then I think the current requirement might be unanimous agreement. And then it goes to the directors. So it's basically the same for all of these. But this will be an interesting one because largely Trishank and Radu have done by far the lion's share of the work. And it will be incumbent on the rest of us to learn and educate ourselves before we vote on it.
Oh yeah, I was thinking maybe it would be worth having people like Justin Cormack, or I know he was involved as well, but if you have other people that we can get external people who could review it for us as well, that might be good.
That would be good. Okay, Jacob has two items that are on one line in the agenda, but you can go ahead and split those out into two if you want for declarative credential scoping and 337. Both of these have to do with, both of them have to do with CNAB Core. Declarative credential scoping is 337 and declarative installers is 338. Both of these are responses to some of the things that came up in 285. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jacob and you can take it away.
Yep. I don't know. I encourage folks to read these. They're not intended really to be final or really to even have implementations right now, but just to demonstrate that it's possible to accomplish some of the things that we wanted to do in 285, and to also show that there is some essential complexity with giving visibility for different runtimes to even know how to install an application, even if you know exactly what the target platform is. So there's different bundling formats, etc. One of the issues also includes an idea for referencing Kubernetes manifests as OCI artifacts, which I don't think we have a spec for that right now either. We're developing one for Helm charts, of course, but for bundles that just want to distribute a plain Kubernetes manifest that can't be dynamically changed necessarily, that would be something that would be useful for someone to define. Yeah.
I've seen the idea of distributing Kubernetes manifests as OCI artifacts in the last couple of weeks appear as if it were approved on by most of the community. And I'm slightly amused / concerned where that's emerged from, because this is the first time I've actually seen this as an option for distributing Kubernetes manifests. And I would like to see, I'm not opposing it, and there is a potential solution using ORAS. So we could definitely do it. First of all, I'm not sure whether it's the right approach. And second of all, I'm not sure if our community should be the one leading the standardization of Kubernetes manifests in OCI. I'm not sure if people have opinions on that.
Given that OCI has been actively discussing this for almost a year, it seems like if we try and jump into this one, we'll be back where we were a year ago when we tried to.
Yeah, I personally, I'm not very interested in even attempting to implement it because it's not like a use case that we have, but I just wanted to show that it's a possible solution for the problems being raised in 285.
Your 337 proposal, the one about an extension for credential scoping, I thought was excellent for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a very clean way of addressing that, but moreover, that's something where we're going to have to come up with a pattern to recommend to certain systems, and this basically builds on the work that Sylvain and Simone, who also worked on this stuff several months ago, had done with the extension mechanism, and I really like the way it just kind of flows out of it. And I think this is one where we can go from proposal to microspec fairly quickly, because it's not part of the core spec, and we can sidestep the usual stuff and give them very. So it took me a while to understand the very beginning. And then once it all kind of clicked together, I'm like, yes, this is why that whole thing that Simone and Sylvain had worked on 6 months ago is really useful, because we can just add these kinds of things in and rely on microspecs to provide guidance for people. So I would love to see that one. If we think there's actually value and not just that we're addressing the concerns of one or two people, that I think would be a fun one to push through, either in a specific form for Kubernetes or a more generic form. Yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
So I'm going to ask dumb questions. Is that okay? Is this a good use of our time? Okay, cool.
Please.
So I'm looking at number 2 for 337. So is the idea that the bundle says, this is essentially the credentials I need, and I want the runtime given basically the user's probably an admin kubeconfig to dynamically call that thing down and make me a much more targeted one that just works for that bundle? Is that what it's doing?
Yes,
that's what
the
like,
idea
the
is
supposed to do, or is that
provide
what
the runtime
tool
with.
is supposed to do?
Sorry, I missed the last bit of your question.
I'm trying to understand, it's the tool or the runtime is supposed to, given basically an admin kubeconfig, most likely, is supposed to.
What do you mean by tool?
Porter or Datadogs or Duffels or.
Okay. Yeah, the idea is to give the CNAB runtime that actually passes in the credential to the invocation image the visibility it needs to have in order to properly downscope, say, an admin kube config to one that is only able to install into a given namespace or create a given set of resources or run a certain set of actions on those resources. Unfortunately, actually doing that in practice is kind of another problem, because dealing with downscoping Kubernetes credentials is like a hard thing to do. But
Okay.
in theory, like this gives you the information to be able to do that.
And it's just enough to install whatever it is. So if what the bundle does is, for example, runs a Helm chart, it's just enough permissions to run the Helm chart.
Right. So you would be able to, like, if you've got a bundle builder tool that understands how to build bundles from a Helm chart, then it can inspect the contents of the Helm chart and generate the right RBAC configuration specific to that Helm chart that it actually needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you say the runtime, I'm trying to think of like what part that would end up getting implemented in. Would it be the part would it end up being like cnab-go? Would it end up being the real runtime? Like what ends up being,
I mean,
who
kind of
ends up getting stuck with that task?
Kind of the cool thing about this is that you wouldn't even necessarily have to support it in a CNAB runtime. You would just be able to pipe the output from CNAB into another set of tools, or even just, I mean, one of the things that I really liked about this is, as a human, I can run that command, see the output and say, oh, so now I have good evidence that what it's asking for permissions for is this. And I can even make a good faith estimate when I'm installing this on my dev workstation, for example, as opposed to a production cluster, and say, okay, well, if that's what it's asking for permissions wise, then I know I can. So I'm not sure that we even, that even accepting this proposal is, well, for sure, as a non-normative piece of the spec, we're not committing to supporting it in all of the tools. But, you know, presumably we could pipe this out and let an external tool be the thing that took the output of it. CNAB's just exposing the mechanics necessary to encode that information in the bundle and then get it out of the bundle from a standard command line if we want to just
if we
see the output.
If we think about the CNAB-go context, what I'm imagining is that we would have like a credential provider interface that anyone could implement that takes a bundle and like its own configuration, and then can generate a credentials.set output for that bundle that can just be a partial set of credentials. So if the bundle has a bunch of things, you could have multiple credential provider implementations that care, like, so we have one that downscopes kube configs and then outputs a credentials.set, and then you can merge those all at the end to provide the actual credentials that you want to the bundle.
Yeah, so like what you were saying though, it happens outside of the runtime. It's happening external at the tooling level as the credentials are being injected into the bundle.
I tend to think of the CNAB runtime as everything outside of the invocation image.
Oh, maybe I use that word wrong.
Well, I mean, we probably all use it slightly differently, but for example, I would imagine that in many cases it would be external tooling to Porter or external tooling to Duffel that would be able to.
Okay.
And we
or
might
a library hosted in CNAB.io. I think at the moment it's, I mean, we started with just Duffel, right? And we all used that as a library. Then we spun out CNAB-go. We'll probably find we'll need to spin out other things, I guess, over time.
Yeah. Cool. But I think we could definitely have an interface in CNAB-go that handles providing credentials for bundles, and then we can have multiple implementations of it and string them together to get the eventual credentials that you need to run an actual operation.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, like, if a bundle relied on this, I was trying to understand how portable the bundle would be or how tied they'd be to whatever, you know, like.
Oh, yeah.
That's all. So like, say someone was really keen on this, if it was implemented something really close to what I consider core or really close to like everyone's going to get it for free, you know, versus only Duffel implemented it or only Datadog implemented it. So I was just trying to understand where I'm going. That's all.
Portability is a good point. That's actually like a key part of the design here, is to make sure that we don't end up with bundles that like can only be installed by one system. The idea is we're not going outside of the spec in any way. We're only adding additional layers of metadata or conventions to enable certain runtimes to have the visibility into what a credential actually is used for or what scopes it should have, versus a naive runtime that maybe just doesn't even care. You have to pass everything in explicitly via command line flags, and it's totally up to the user to understand those things. But I think like 285 in part was saying, you know, that's a problem, and we just don't have, I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, the idea is to keep everything portable by not going outside the spec at all, but provide the visibility that you need for like progressive enhancement, if you will.
So if you used a tool that understood this, you would get tighter security. But if you use a tool that didn't get updated, doesn't understand this custom extension at all, your bundle would still run.
Yeah, so if you have a tool running that understands the extension, then it could say like prompt a user to say, hey, is it okay to grant X, Y, and Z permissions for creating these types of resources to this bundle? And you just wouldn't be able to do that with a more naive implementation.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me ask all my dumb questions. Maybe everyone else just like totally got all this from the text, but
no, that was great.
Now it's like immortalized in our recording.
Yeah, that was really good. I think in 285 there's a bunch of tensions that we have to unwind a bit, and one of them is how tightly do you couple the authoring tool and the runtime? Because obviously if you tightly couple, or if you expect people to be authoring with the same tool that they run with, you can do all kinds of magic. So I think some of that magic should be codified in the non-normative sections, with the option that we promote it to part of the spec if we see massive adoption. I think we really should be open to people proposing good ideas and then using CNAB where it makes sense, and then making it part of the spec if it really does become well adopted.
Okay, are we good on that one? I'll move on to the next one. Okay, which is actually, go ahead, bud.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, please read and comment.
Next one, offline schema validation in CNAB-GO with an example to number 188. I don't know who added this to the agenda. It's probably Radu. Yeah, okay.
I added it. There's a PR in CNAB-GO to validate the schema before using bundles. And because we right now have all schemas in cnab.io/schema/ whatever the name of the schema is, in the current version of the PR, we simply make a request to get the schema file, and then compare it and actually try to validate the current bundle against the schema. The problem that I think Sylvain pointed out is that in air-gapped environments that will fail because you don't have connectivity, which means we have to bundle, pun intended, the schemas together with any binary you have at runtime. Do people have strong opinions or ideas on how to do that as efficiently as possible?
I think we
might have to bundle them with any library or tool that tries to do bundle validation.
I think we do this with Compose spec in the Docker CLI. So I would look there or ask Sebastian or Sila. I think they're the two people we know best. The only caveat would be that if Docker did it a long time ago, there may be a better way now. Because it's the same as the vendoring and things like that. We've got a lot of older libraries and things we use.
Ideally, I would like to avoid pasting the schemas in a Go file.
Oh, yeah, we use we like bin packet.
Right, so that's what the name of that package was. I'm sitting here going, what's that package? We always, is it bin data or bin pack? Something like.
We use Packer from Go Buffalo actually, but we don't use Go bin data. I think that's probably what you're thinking of, but it's the same concept. Yeah. And then it gets compiled into the binary, so you can just then reference it. A bunch of different tools do it. You just pick which one you want to use. But it's something that it's not something you can really like put in at the library level. You can kind of do it, but it's up to the final binary to actually want to use it.
Well, for one, Jacob's question is which binary would this be compiled into? Well, Duffel for once, and probably Porter as well, Docker app, any runtime that needs to do anything offline, that needs to use a bundle offline would probably need this.
We wouldn't want to include it in a CNAB-go. That would be a nice way to tie CNAB-go to a specific version of the spec.
Yeah.
I just linked to what we do for some of the other things we need to ship around with our binary, but in case anyone was curious what library I'm talking about.
Okay, I'll have a look at this. The current version of just requesting the file just in time was ideal because we could just update the reference to a remote file and not specifically tie into, but I think it also makes sense to have the schema locally. So we could also validate all bundles that we generate against the version of the schema that we support in that current version of CNAB-go. So I think this will also be a good addition.
I think sometimes it's helpful too to have more than one scheme so that, so for example, with like the tool we use, it actually looks for something on the file system first so that you can actually refresh something and have it be more up to date than what's currently in the binary. So in an air gap scenario, you could grab something from the URL and move it along with your binary and have it sit next to the binary, and it'll grab it and use that instead of what's inside the binary. If it's sitting there next to it, if nothing's sitting there next to it, it'll use what's inside the binary, and that kind of helps with you're not stuck with whatever was packed inside of the binary.
Yeah, but ideally you get the guarantee that whatever was packed with the binary is supported by the binary, I think. I think that's the main thing you get out of distributing the schemas alongside the runtime.
Yeah.
I think the honest answer is there's not many pretty ways to do this. We're going to have to probably do something gross, but yeah, I understand that you want to try and do something nice. I just, Sylvain, the link that Sylvain posted, it looks like we have base 64 encoded schemas if you scroll down far enough, so which I know is exactly what you want to avoid.
Yeah, and Jacob's last comment there is also applicable. Ideally, thick bundles could embed remote schema refs for the parameters that they use as well, because parameters are allowed to suck in remote refs for their JSON schema. That we should actually open an issue for and track, because that may have some.
That's actually a good point. If you think about it, if you have a thin bundle, then you must definitely have a connection because you have to pull whatever's referenced in the bundle. For thick bundles, we could choose to just go the route of adding the actual schema files inside the thick bundle and avoid doing that in the runtime.
Yeah, although there's some question of whether you're really validating a thing if you say, let me see if this thing is doing things the right way. Hey, thing, are you doing things the right way?
We should open an issue.
Yeah, we should, because I think, yeah, I think there are actually several schema-related things in here that I hadn't thought of at all before that are good things for us to all talk through. Okay, that was our last agenda item. Does anybody have any last-minute things they'd like to talk about, or shall we end a little bit early?
That was a very convincing end, a little bit early. No, I'm joking.
Shall we cough, cough, end a little?
Just one thing. When are we going to schedule the chat about the 285 issue? Because I know that that's supposed to happen at some point. Do we have an idea?
I think Glenn is the one that we need to clear times by. So Glenn also, what time zone is Glenn in? Does anybody know?
I think he's in England, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so we'll have to figure out something morning time, US Pacific, and hope preferably not evening time in Europe. So
just as a side note, we do have a weekly CNAB meeting. Every week we have a CNAB meeting.
Yeah, I just saw it pop up on the community channel, so I just wanted to follow up on that.
you mean the one that we're in now, and next week is the security?
Yep. We have on every other week we have CNAB Core meeting and then CNAB Security and Registry. So
we probably could delegate one of the off meetings for one of these. One of these.
Or is it worth having it in the community meeting? I don't know. I just saw it pop up in Slack, so I don't know what the full thing is, but maybe we should pose that question.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you all for the hard work getting CNAB 1.0.1 finished, and for the extraordinary amount of work people have been putting into the claims stuff and resolving some of the 285 stuff for the last few weeks. It has been great to see the momentum. I'm going to plug the blogs that what's their name, Engine, ENDJIN, did about the way that Microsoft is using CNAB. They did a really good write-up of that, and surprised Carolyn and I when we saw it Monday morning, and that was a very pleasant surprise. But it was good to see another well-articulated use case for CNAB. So if you haven't gotten a chance to take a look at those, I wish I had the link off the top of my head because I would paste it in here right now. Radu is holding up one finger, which probably means, there we go. That was good. So another fun use case for that. All right, thank you all very much for the hard work, and we will reconvene here in 2 weeks for our CNAB core meeting. Next week is security, right? CNAB security.
And Red.
Also known as the Trishank and Radu show, which is
occasional interruptions by someone else.
Yeah. So, all right, we will see you all then, and stay healthy.
Thanks. Bye.